Welcome to the mini lecture for the second module of the course, History and Black Entrepreneurs. In this lecture, we are going to look at the period of time known as the Great Migration from 1900 through 1920. Most of the material that I'll be presenting in this mini lecture comes from the Library of Congress located at loc.gov. The Oxford English Dictionary defines migration as the movement of people to a new area or country in order to find work or better living conditions. This was certainly true of the Great Migration period from 1900 through 1920. During this time, millions of Black people from the southern United States moved north to cities where there was work. Why did this happen? After slavery officially ended in 1865, many Black people continued to live in the southern states working on farms and in rural areas. As the 1900s began, the Industrial Revolution brought factories into cities such as Detroit, Chicago, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and New York City. Jobs were created because there was a need for workers in those factories, and millions of Black people moved north in hopes of creating a better life. Beyond jobs, they were looking for better housing, better schools for their children, and a better quality of life. The Great Migration had several impacts that benefited Black entrepreneurs. First, it concentrated large numbers of Black people in cities. This helped entrepreneurs by making it easier to market their products to a large group of people at once, instead of having to travel to many farms in rural areas in the southern states. Second, people did have more money to spend because of their jobs in the cities. Third point, more Black newspapers began to be published in various cities. The newspapers gave entrepreneurs a place to advertise their goods and services, getting the word out to places that might not otherwise know about their businesses. Finally, the forming of organizations to fight discrimination and foster Black empowerment, while not a direct benefit to most entrepreneurs, was very important. Part of what the entrepreneurs did was help and support other Black people, and many entrepreneurs were very active in these organizations. One of the organizations that you may have heard of is the NAACP, the National Organization for the Advancement of Colored People. The NAACP was founded in 1910 and still exists today. It works to fight discrimination in many areas. There were negative side effects to the Great Migration. The largest was segregation. Segregation is the enforced separation of different racial groups in a country, community, or establishment. The period from 1900 through 1920 is also known as the segregation era, because that is when discrimination against Black people became legal. A series of laws were passed in many southern states that are collectively known as Jim Crow laws. These laws mandated separation of the races in many aspects of public life. Black people and white people could not attend the same schools, eat at the same restaurants, stay in the same hotels, or drink from the same water fountains. Most of these laws were passed at the local level in various cities or states of the South. At the federal level, there was also support for segregation. In 1913, President Woodrow Wilson introduced segregation into federal government agencies, including the United States Post Office. His action spread legal segregation throughout the United States, and those laws persisted through the next 3 federal administrations. This gives you a bit of background about the Great Migration period. In the required readings, you'll be reading about Madam C.J. Walker, who was a very rich and famous entrepreneur at that time, as well as more information about the Great Migration.